Okay, could I ask everyone to take your seats, please? Okay, I'm going to call the Placerville City Council meeting to order. This is August 11th. At this time, we're honored to have a Boy Scout troop visiting us. It's Troop 58, and I'm going to ask two of their members to come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Two.
Thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Mayor Borelli,
Here.
Councilmember Clarici,
Here.
Vice Mayor Patton,
Here.
Councilmember Thomas,
Here.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Here.
Announcements, presentations to the public. First on the agenda tonight is presentation regarding Greater Sacramento Area Economic Council. We have Mr. John Kruger with us, who's going to give the report.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for having me here this evening. I really appreciate you allowing me to have some time in your agenda to talk a little bit about the Greater Sacramento Area Economic Council. I do have a quick presentation, but I want to make sure that as I cover the organization and what we're trying to achieve, that I would much rather have you stop me and have any kind of conversation that we have in the time that's allotted today, rather than have me get through the PowerPoint presentation of which I will gladly run through, but would rather have the conversation about it than get through and not cover any parts of information that you would like to have of me. So with that, I did bring a quick presentation, but the Greater Sacramento Area Economic Council, and I'll give a couple of second overview. In the middle of 2014, a group of local CEOs in the Greater Sacramento area, along with Mayor Kevin Johnson, spearheaded the start of a new organization, Greater Sacramento Area Economic Council. What they did was they met with the existing board of the SACTO organization, the Sacramento Area Commerce and Trade Organization. And they agreed that what they would do would be to combine those two boards and merge officially the two organizations under the new banner, Greater Sacramento Area Economic Council. So we have the current position of being a 40-year-old startup, I like to call it. So we're the organization SACTO had their 40th anniversary in January of this year, so we have a really fantastic base of local business support. We had over 400 members in SACTO as an organization from businesses. And what we wanted to do with the new organization was not to remove any current members, but to change the membership base to include more public sector members like yourselves. Economic development is really best done in a public and private sector partnership. It is very hard for just the public sector to do economic development successfully on its own. It's very hard and even harder for the private sector to do it by itself. It really needs to be a joint effort between public and private sectors. So we have really worked hard to make the new organization be both funded public and privately and engaged public and privately. So we have a series of meetings and engagement pieces for our public sector partners right now that happens every other Friday. For the first 3 months, we met every Friday with our public sector partners. And I know that should you decide to join our efforts here, you would be a part of that every other Friday, where we talk a lot about what economic development best practices are in the region. We talk about prospect activity, we talk about growth, we talk about things that we have found from our private sector partners that are inhibiting business growth. We share what we are seeing outside of the metropolitan Sacramento area to why businesses might come to our region. So we do a lot of that, and the way that we do it, how we have decided that what we need to have is basically data and evidence. Everything that we do is based on data and evidence. So you'll see at the very top of my slide here, first and foremost is the engine, is what we refer to as our research and data analytics platform. We've just brought someone on board that will be our full-time research and strategy manager. It is about a $90,000 per year analytics platform, and by platform I mean 4 or 5 proprietary economic models. So what we can do is take a company that may be interested in the market, look at the specs of that. Maybe it's a 10,000 square foot office user, maybe it's a 15,000 square foot manufacturer, and I can put that in our region, that project, and I can compare it to about 40 different metropolitan areas across the United States and say, this is where I'm very strong. I might be more costly here, but I have access to better talent. I have workforce that looks like this. I have education pipeline that looks like this. My universities look like this, and my comparisons across those other metropolitan areas look like this. So when you're making a decision on our region, this is what you're comparing yourselves against. So models like that is what I mean by this engine of analytics and data. Then what I do with that data is kind of twofold. I bring the data internally back to the region and I say, our local California State Sacramento University is the worst performing university in graduating its freshmen in 4 years. What are we going to do about that? Obviously, that's a pipeline. That's a workforce challenge for us. If we're talking about growing the workforce here in our region, but our local large public university is not graduating freshmen in an order of 4, but 5, 6, or 7 years, not 4 or 5 years, but 6 and 7 years. I don't have the workforce pipeline to be able to bring the companies to the market. So we need to do something as a region to impact Sacramento State. UC Davis, most of its technology is looking at Silicon Valley. It's not looking at what it can do in Sacramento region. It's looking at what it can do in the Bay Area, what it can do in East Bay. How do we refocus UC Davis and bring it back to our region's UC school? It's not another UC Bay Area school. It's our region's UC school. So how are we going to bring that technology development back into? It's the only California university with 2 number 1 colleges within its university. No other California university has that distinction of number 1 global programs within its university. And it's looking at the Bay Area, not at Sacramento. And how do we fix these things? So the engine drives analytics. If we bring it back to our region, how are we going to fix this as a region? And then also it's then the other side of the coin. How do I take the number 1 university in the UC system with those rankings of number 1 colleges, and how do I market that throughout the United States and globally as a fantastic opportunity for workforce, fantastic opportunity for research, fantastic opportunity for collaboration between private and public sectors on R&D, and have that be a location for companies. So take the analytics, bring it internally and fix our community, bring it externally and sell it the community and the positives, and bring new jobs to our community. Excuse me. So that's the design of the new operation. What's the role in regional economic development as opposed to the local communities, as opposed to the state engine, other regional groups? There is a role for all 3. Again, like public and private economic development done in a collaboration, you can't do real impactful economic development without having a good state economic development, excuse me. You can't have that without having local entities wanting to drive their own economic development. If you didn't have an economic development plan in place here in Placerville, which you have, and I think it's a really great plan for you, there wouldn't be the capability for a regional group to have any impact with you. But you have looked at economic development, you have decided on what your plan needs to be as a community, and the local and the regional group working together is to further your local economic development goals. What our goal is regionally is to look at competitiveness within our state and then nationally. It's to use that data and analytics to develop a competitive position. Where do we stand competitively as a region within our state? And then how do I use my state economic development groups to improve that position within the state and our state within the nation and globally? So that's how you work all three of these groups together.
Could I ask you a question?
Please, yeah.
My concern is, I'm wondering, is it rural versus urban? In other words, we're a small rural community, and do you have a separate way of addressing our needs versus the larger communities?
You know, we look at them.
I need you to talk in the microphone so we can.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We look at it really irrespective of boundaries. You know, I'm not developing a list of rural concerns and urban concerns and trying to pitch them against each other for whose we address first. You know, we're trying to improve the economy as a whole, and our economy is Galt to Placerville to Auburn to Yuba to Sacramento to Yolo and Davis. And it's all of the issues that make our region one whole. I mean, that really is, I think the idea of having a set of urban problems that compete with a set of rural problems are what really drives a wedge between public and private sector economic development initiatives. When you come to the state and you say you're not addressing my rural concerns, all of a sudden you become combative with other issues within your region that are all both trying to do the same thing, and then neither gets done.
Actually, if I can interrupt you for
Please.
just a second.
Yeah.
Piggybacking on what the mayor said, perhaps it's not looking at a competitive standpoint where
Sure.
there are conflicting agendas. It's recognizing the differences in the assets and the benefits
Right.
of the rural model as well as the urban model, because we have certainly other things to offer, and understanding what our assets are and how that fit in to a more regional perspective,
Sure.
I think is what the mayor is saying. And
Yeah.
so that does require a different sensitivity and a different understanding of what's
Yes.
appropriate for the character and the attractiveness of our area, which then benefits the Sacramento area as a whole.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and that is exactly how we look at it. You know, so I address this whole one versus the other by saying exactly what you've said. It's an assets across a region, not a competitive disadvantage of one versus the other. So what our job is, and frankly, it really isn't even a membership dollar amount that I'm here trying to talk about today, because that doesn't further my mission. What furthers my mission and the ability to bring jobs, to bring companies here, is the ability to say part of my region includes Placerville. You know, if you haven't been to Placerville, if you haven't seen what we have across my entire Galt to Placerville, Sacramento, across that whole breadth of our region, we have everything to offer. So I'll be in Chicago talking to a site selection consultant who says, yeah, I don't think Sacramento is really the right region for me. I'm really looking for I have that. No, I have that. You know, there isn't a single, I want to be in a place where I have every card possible. So when a company says, no, I'm really looking for a small medical device, it's a small company, we're talking 5 to 10 people, I need 2,000 square feet of space, I want everybody to look, we're gonna all walk to work, I want it to be, I have that. I have that in 5 different places for you. Do you want it to be in a mountain, mining, historic community? Do you want it to be in a new south of Elk Grove? I have 5 of those that I can bring to bear because I represent the entire region. And that's what I want to be here tonight to understand, to say, to look at your economic development plans and say, and know intimately, when I run into that project out there that wants this, that's perfect for a Placerville location. I mean, that's what I want to have. And Cleve and I were talking earlier, that is exactly what I want out of a relationship with all of my communities, is to understand what best fits into your community, because that's the deck of cards I'm going to bring out when I run into that opportunity, when I'm doing my job, which is to get out into the rest of the United States and look for businesses that are expanding and looking for a new place to do business. I can say I have that perfect location. So you're right that it's absolutely understanding what you want to be in 5 years and in 10 years. And if I understand that well, and again, that's that role up here on the screen, if I can understand what role you play and how you want to drive your community, I know how to push that into something that I can really market nationally. And that's what I do with our current budget allowances is about $3 million. We hope to build a $3.5 to $4 million marketing campaign. And what cities get and companies get when they fund that marketing campaign is a seat at the table, so that when you list those communities, when I'm in Chicago, when I'm in Newark, or I'm in Los Angeles, or the Bay Area talking to a small med tech startup device company, or I'm working with a Chinese company that's a perfect example right now. They're looking for space that's in the cancer clinical diagnostics space. It's small, they're not looking for a lot of space, but they're looking for some place that a community would embrace. I don't know if that would be a fit, having spent about a half an hour, looking at your economic development
Brand new
plan.
cancer center opening just next month in Cameron Park, the Marshall Medical Center.
So, looking for a space nearby, a cancer treatment center, cancer center to do early stage screening diagnostics would be perfect. So those are the kinds of things we're looking at. It isn't how do you fit an urban concern within a region? How do you fit a rural concern within a region? It's understanding that full flavor of assets that allows me to market. I have that. We have that. Sacramento's the next great thing out of California. That really is our new tagline. We're building a new website with a new portal where we will spend all of our time. I have a business development team who will spend all of their time outside of our region, convincing companies and having conversations with the people that companies hire, site selection consultants, real estate brokers, attorneys, accounting firms, to help them evaluate new locations. And we'll be feeding them this sets of information and driving them to a new website. But that will be Placerville. That will be Galt. And I had the same conversation with the city council with Galt, and they had a lot of the same concerns. I'll tell you what's funny, that's not probably surprising for you that Galt would have the same concerns about having a Sacramento. What's funny is Citrus Heights had the same exact question. Are you going to spend all of your time driving these rural concerns if you're working with Auburn and you're working with Yuba and you're working with Yolo County communities? What are you going to... Everybody has the same concern, and frankly, I'm glad you do. It means you care about your community, not just about placating somebody in a suit comes up and asks for $4,000. Because that's really not what this is about. What this is about is trying to have a regional collaboration around making a better region that includes Placerville, that includes the city of Sacramento. So that's kind of a very long-winded answer to, we don't look at it as one versus another, but it's an asset within a region that I get to market if you're part of it. I don't get to market if you're not part of it. I do get to, and selfishly, I'd rather have more to market than less.
Well, thank you. I think that you answered our question. We're just kind of gun shy because it seems like everything that we attempt to do, especially in the area of transportation, and
Sure.
We're a rural community, and we kind of lose out to the larger areas all the time.
Right.
And so that's why we're asking these questions.
Yeah. And,
About rural versus urban. So.
Sure. No, and that's, you bring up another point, and I'm glad, Mayor, you said that, because the other thing that we offer to communities that have decided to partner with us to do this economic development thing that we do is the research capabilities. So, often what we have found with smaller communities that don't have an economic development department of 10, that don't have large research capabilities, all of our research capabilities that we have to drive our economic development analytics are available to all of our member communities. It doesn't matter how big you are. It doesn't matter what your, cost, what your buy-in is. It's all available to you. So we've had communities in the past, and I've been doing this for regional groups and then statewide groups for the past 15, 16 years now. I worked for a statewide utility that did it across border communities in southern Arizona to metropolitan Phoenix to large university towns in northern Arizona. So I've done them in a lot of communities, and the research analytics that we can help bring to bear can help make the case the next time you're coming up against the next transportation dollars that are coming out of the state. Here's your economic development impact of getting that interchange done. We have the analytics to help you put that together, versus when you put it together yourselves, we're that extra third party that says, we've done an economic analysis. If that was to build out because they had a new interchange, I'm just using interchange as an example here, right. But if you had a new interchange and you're going after dollars for that, and I can show the economic impact to a community like yours versus an interchange as an economic impact in Sacramento County or Sacramento, not to say I'm going to start pitting communities within my region against one another, but the impact to you for that interchange from an economic development perspective is going to be more impactful than that same dollar spent in another community. And we can help put that case together working with your city staff along with your economic development plan. So that is, again, part of what we hope to do with this entire group of communities that we've brought together to do Greater Sacramento economic development.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So in order to do what we do, we have a very series of very specific metrics. We will be doing business attraction work. We will go out and have 90 to hopefully 100 prospects, which is what we call companies that are considering moving to a market that we might work with. We hope this year that we do 12 locates. We hope that we have jobs, but we've contracted with our communities and our partners to hit these goals. We will be measured 2 times a year against our progress on these goals. So, what we do is in some regards art, in terms of how do you sell a community with a vast differential in assets across rural to urban, large to small. But it is also very clinical in that I will measure my success very succinctly 2 times a year and get measured personally against it. So it is very specific in that I will help you understand what the economic impact of my programs are to your community every single year. It won't be I come back in 5 years and hey, I'm here for another dollar figure and hope it was good for you. But I'll come back and say, here's the economic impact of our programs. Here's the metrics that we set on an annual basis. And as a part of our group, all of our member communities help steer our metrics. If they say, hey, those are sandbagging, you got that a little bit higher. Or, that's going to be really tough for you to hit. Let's look at the economic trends that suggest that.
Excuse me.
Yes.
That slide.
Yeah.
Is that 950 jobs in 6 months?
So no, this is our goal for this next year.
That's what I meant.
Yes,
yeah.
Right, yeah. So it will be, this year started in July 1.
Okay.
We'll go through June 30th, and that will be, we will work specifically with these companies to help convince them to bring 1,000 jobs to Greater Sacramento.
It seems like a remarkably small number to me. It seems like in the wash of all the jobs that are created and lost in the Sacramento region, that 1,000 jobs would just be like noise, and it
Sure.
would be almost impossible, because that's actually 1/10 of the jobs that are inside the city limits of this particular jurisdiction. And so it seems like I hope you hit that.
Yes, I will almost assuredly hit those numbers. I'll tell you how we came up to those numbers. Based on the ability for a certain number of staff to really make an impact on those jobs. You made a very good point when you talk about the general wash of growth. Well, I'm not general wash of anything. You will not be able to talk to a company that I work with without saying my business development team by first and last name, exactly what I did for them. So the CEO of the Japanese Inc. firm that I'm working with right now, I know where his kids are going to school, and I know what his decision factor was here. I presented to him the difference between a Reno set of jobs and a Sacramento set of jobs around the 5 different skill sets he told me he would need to find. This won't be I drove by and saw a company located itself, and I'm just going to write that down. So these are jobs that we helped convince to come here. So these are jobs that we went out and found and brought them here, as opposed to I answered the phone, somebody was already interested, the deal was already done, and I'm going to meet them for dinner, and then I'm going away. So and year 2 will be much larger than this. Year 3 will be much larger than this, but with an initial start of staff of about 6, how can we actually have the data and analytics and the outreach team to make an impact year 1? It was basic math on, if I have a team of 2, and this is what they can handle from a portfolio, this is what I think they should be able to land from 90 to 12. It is a very good conversion rate from 90 companies to 12.
Okay.
But you're absolutely right. If I was to just go out and try to count jobs from job growth 1 to 2, year 1 to year 2, 950 jobs isn't a lot. But these will be 950 very specific jobs tied to our region that will be here through the next recession, and not retail generated, by the way. So I don't know if that had been clear. So we don't work on any kind of retail jobs at all. So all of the jobs are going to be non-retail. That will be very specific base economic driver industries. So it talks a little bit about kind of attraction and retention. Retention, we haven't built this program out, and we hope to have staff to have a built-out retention program sometime in the next 6 months to a year. And these are some of our early investors who's already on board from the private sector side, with whom we expect to be able to do really large initiatives. I'll give you a good example. We're working with 2 or 3 of these CEOs of large companies to help aggregate travel data so that we can get that aggregated travel data to Sacramento International Airport so that they can bring more direct flights based on aggregated data. The challenge the airport has right now is everybody uses Orbitz. Well, if you use Orbitz or all the other kind of flight travel planners, or you book your flight yourself, there's no aggregate data available to airports to be able to say, my local business travel looks like X, and therefore I should have 2 more direct flights to Chicago weekly, daily. So we're helping to aggregate some of these numbers using CEO of VSP as one of our board members and the current chair. We're going to use the McClatchy Group to be able to aggregate our travel information. So we're going out to use those CEO base to further a public regional partnership like an airport asset. That's why it's important for us to chase that specific set of CEOs, not just that the funding allows us to scale our programs. The previous SACTA organization had 400 members with an average annual membership of about $2,500 a piece. If you needed a $500,000 piece for a 4-year commitment to digital marketing campaign, which would be a email redirect, which would be a kind of a cookies program, get retargeted videos. If you've ever been on the internet and gone from one site to another site and seen a video kind of surprisingly just about the thing you were on a minute ago, that is a digital marketing trick campaign that when you go, the computer drops a cookie on your site and you go to the next site, the video advertising is based on that cookie that's left over. We want someone to visit a Sacramento-based company, go off to CNN, go off to the Wall Street Journal, and see a Greater Sacramento advertisement come up with the mayor of Placerville on there saying how fantastic our region is. And they're wondering, how in the world did I just get to a video of the mayor of Placerville? Well, it's because that's what our digital marketing campaign looks like. I mean, that's what we're trying to drive is this digital marketing campaign. But those are expensive. And so in order to scale from a $400,000 5-year program, when you have investors averaging at $2,500 a piece, you need a lot more investors in order to get there, rather than 2 new CEOs at $100,000 a piece for 5 years. So that's kind of why we've changed the model around from a CEO-funded investor program like this than a membership entity, which really was kind of stealing some of the membership ability for our local chambers, because they were doing events to keep up with their membership, not furthering a mission like, who's going to aggregate my travel so I can get more direct flights to Chicago from my airport. So those are the big kind of shifts that we've done, and we would love to have Placerville as a partner. We wanted 15 communities originally, 17 have said yes. So, we're already kind of beyond the scope of how we balance our public and private partnerships up, but would love to, if Placerville would decide they would be interested in the collaboration, we would love to have you all as a partner. And I believe these are some of the communities that have already said yes. We have a really interesting protocol agreement too, because the other thing that we have communities ask me a lot is, how do you work together? Because doesn't the city of Davis, really, wouldn't they rather have that company go to Davis than to West Sac? Or wouldn't West Sac really, if you're looking at these, wouldn't they really rather go to West Sac than Sacramento? And so the very first thing that we have done with all of our partner communities is ask them politely to, if they want to play, to sign a protocol agreement of how we work together as an organization, with punishable actions if you have infractions that is governed by the team of economic development practitioners. And part of them is no incentivizing one person's company to move to another community. So that we have very clear guidelines that within this partnership, we are a partnership as a region, not here to learn each other's secrets and find out how I can steal a Placerville company to Cameron Park, or a Cameron Park company to a Rancho Cordova, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a set of protocol agreements that these communities have all signed on, with that governs basically our interaction with each other, and it's the framework of how we have a trust as a region that allows us to work together with initiatives without worrying about, is this a urban versus an urban versus a rural? Is this a big versus a small? Is this a industrial versus an office? Is this a UC Davis versus Sac State? All of it is a betterment for our region. So with that, I just wanted to kind of briefly go through some of the changes and what we're seeing and what the membership would look like, how we govern ourselves and our partnership, and would love to entertain any questions that you have about the organization or what we're going to do the next couple of years, how we go forward.
Okay, I'll start. Tricia, do you have any questions? Carol?
I got mine answered.
John? Any more?
How much was this going to cost?
The per capita rate for public partnership is 40 cents per capita. So I think based on your population, somewhere around $4,500.
Per year?
A year.
Is it
Sorry. Yes. Yeah, that's per year. So, that, and then part of what that is, again, is we want to make this an even playing field. This is all about evening the playing field between the public and private sector and within the public sector, because the city of Sacramento is also in it at 40 cents per capita. The county of Sacramento, 40 cents per capita. So everybody's in it for the exact same dollar figure, which has the different, kind of equal skin in the game, so to speak. So about $4,000 a year.
Okay. With that, I will say thank you so much, and I'm sure we will have discussions about joining your program, and we'll talk with you later.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate the time, and look forward to answering any further questions you might have about Greater Sacramento Area Economic Council.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Okay, next is mid-year crime statistics report, and that would be Chief Heller.
Mayor, members of the council, got some good news to report on the mid-year crime stats. So
Good.
overall, Part 1 crime is down 7% in the city.
Great.
And that's driven primarily by a significant decrease in violent crime. Violent crime's down approximately 47% from January to June 2015 compared to January to June of 2014. That's being driven primarily by the aggravated assaults, which are down about 52%. Property crime is up slightly, about 1%, but it's really leveled off since some of the driving factors we've seen post realignment, AB 109, that sort of thing. So currently about 1%. The bright spot there is the burglary rate is down 31% compared to last year.
That's good.
There is an uptick in auto theft and larceny, but overall, like I said, property crimes are mostly flat. Violent crime is down significantly. Overall, Part 1 crimes, again, down 7%. The driving factors, as I mentioned, continue to be the prison realignment, AB 109, the non-non-nons, which tend to commit the lesser offenses, not necessarily the violent crimes, but the property crimes and that sort of thing. Also, the habitual transient offender challenges we've seen that continue, although they have begun to flatten out. And the recent passage of Prop 47, which has decriminalized, prior felony violations for narcotics, et cetera, and reducing those to misdemeanors. There's some charts in the report you can refer to. And as far as property crime, the police department continues to take an aggressive stance on property crimes with our crime mapping, our app on the smartphone and tablets, et cetera, where folks in the community and the officers can check and see crime trends as they occur by the day, week, year, et cetera. We also continue to expand our footprint in the social media area with a presence and growing presence with Nixle, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, which has been responsible for solving several cases as well. And with that, again, down 7%. Recent National Night Out was very successful, and I think that's a large part of our reduction of our crime rate is the strong partnership we share with our community. With that, I'd take any questions you may have.
I should know the answer to this. What is larceny?
Theft. So your larceny is going to be your theft. It's not off a person. It's not a robbery. It's a theft of property. A simple theft.
Okay.
Any more questions? Well, overall, I
good
think it's
news.
a great report and good news. Keep up the good work. Okay, next we have closed session report. John Driscoll?
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight in closed session, with all members present, the council unanimously approved the claim of James Murphy. Other than that, no reportable action was taken.
Okay, thank you. The adoption of the agenda, and I would like to say that we need to eliminate 8.6 and pull 12.1, whoever, when you have your motion. Did you get it?
Can I ask what do you mean by pulling 12.1, just eliminate off the agenda? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, if I can give an explanation.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
yeah.
Cleve.
On 8.6, we apologize. It's duplicate to 8.9 and therefore unnecessary, so it's eliminated from the agenda.
Right.
12.1 we will be bringing back to your next agenda. There was a noticing requirement that we did not get done, and so we will notice that, bring back on your next agenda. So simply pull it and it will be brought back at your next council meeting.
Okay. I make a motion that we adopt the agenda with the changes as requested by the mayor.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, ceremonial matters. Another pleasurable task. Oath of office to our new police officer, Kevin McErnery. Did I say it right or wrong?
Yeah, it's Kevin McInerney.
Oh, okay.
So
Sorry about that.
I think he's ready. Just a quick introduction to Kevin. Kevin's our newest police officer, and he's here tonight with his wife, Lisa, and his son, Raylan. Kevin comes to us with almost a decade of law enforcement experience, including 5 years with the Sanger Police Department and the last couple years with the Fresno County District Attorney's Office. Officer McInerney possesses a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and is currently working on his master's degree. He has a broad base of experience, including patrol, investigations, detectives, gang unit, tactical team, range master, officer-involved shooting team, and a variety of other special assignments. So,
Sounds like
swear him
we...
in, and I got a badge for him here too. So.
Good. Okay, Mrs. Zito.
If you'll raise your right hand and repeat after me, I state your name,
Kevin McInerney,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and to the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Welcome again. I think there's a little guy we need to meet. No. What's his name?
Adorable.
Welcome to Placerville.
Raylan, what are these people not? Raylan, do you help? Raylan, I gave you a coin. Come on now.
Bribe.
Take this.
Bribery.
Hold this. Here, let mom hold that. Okay, you take this. We can do this. We can do this. Seriously. Here. Here enough. Here we go, ready? Put it in there. Here, hold this part.
How many people does it take?
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come see us again.
Yes.
The way he looked up at his daddy at that moment was pretty precious.
Okay. Next, we have the consent calendar. And note that all matters listed under the consent calendar are oh, I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead. Public comment. Brief, non-agenda items. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. State law prohibits the council from acting on items not listed on the agenda except by special action of the City Council under specified circumstances. The mayor reserves the right to limit the speaker's time to 3 minutes. The mayor will recognize you, and when you come to the microphone, please state your name for the record. You are not allowed to make personal attacks on individuals or make comments which are slanderous or which may invade an individual's personal privacy. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. State law prohibits the council from acting on items not listed on the agenda except by special action of the City Council under specified circumstances. Please give any written material presented at the meeting to the city clerk for public record. Okay, first I'll ask if we have any written communication.
None tonight, thank you.
Okay, I'll open it up for oral communication. Anyone wishing to speak to the council, please come forward.
Good evening, council members and mayor. This is Tom Cumpston speaking. I rode my bicycle to this evening's meeting, and unfortunately when I got here I found I had no place to park. It's kind of surprising that at the town hall where the Parks and Recreation Department is, that there's no bike rack. I parked my bike underneath the stairwell outside. I've had the same experience at City Hall, and I had the same solution there. I parked my bike under the stairwell in the city parking garage. I've also been down to the shops on Main Street, visited those shops, sometimes with my other friends who ride bikes, and we also use the stairwell at the other end of the parking garage to park our bikes. So I wanted to suggest to the city council and the city staff that a very inexpensive solution, a very bike-friendly solution for your citizens would be to get some plain Jane bike racks. They don't have to be bollards, they don't have to be attractive, and place them under the stairwells here and at both ends of the city parking garage so that there's secure bike parking both downtown and here. Thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion. Anyone else?
Good evening, Kirk Smith of Placerville. I'm pleased that about a month ago I put up an exhibit of artifacts recovered from the construction done on Main Street. It was first at Steve Crandall's place and has now been moved across the street to the location of Canines on Main, and it's rewarding that it's been successful. There are people who stop at all hours to read the material. I was interested a couple of sessions ago to learn that you used for that construction project a standard clause out of the Caltrans Red Book of Legal Gobbledygook, the clause that said that you're going to give salvage rights to a contractor because that way you don't have to assume liability should they find contaminated material. And that's good to know, but at the first session of the public meetings held on this subject, some people asked what happens if you find artifacts, and the statement made was that they would be protected, a general phrase like that. Somebody recorded it on their phone. And then we find some time later different meanings about what was done, these post hoc rationalizations. One of the things that I think we could agree on is that the city has an exceptionally qualified, very experienced, gifted lawyer for city attorney. I hope I didn't lay that on too thick. But John could come up with an hour easily in a diverse room of people and come up with a clause like that where you preserve your distance from contaminated products and at the same time safeguard your material. But the explanation you came up with was that the material wasn't, you raised questions about is something historically significant, and then used the example of another phrase which was of museum quality, defined as whether you could find the same thing in another museum of comparable quality or better. Some, again, vague expression like that. But actually what's historically significant is what the object tells us about the past. I'm just going to give you a photograph I'll give to your clerk. And this is a can of food. It's badly rusted and badly damaged. According to your definition, you would never find this in a museum because we all know there are tons of cans like that in landfills all over this country of better quality for 100 to 150 years old. But that's in our museum. And the reason is that it tells us about our past. That's found on a mining camp. And that's the kind of way that our ancestors, those who built this community, lived. If you didn't need utensils, you ate with, your knife. And likewise, all my life, I'd look at these photographs of Main Street, and I wonder, I'd assumed, like I think most people, that they were, I hope you don't mind, I didn't check the clock here, but.
You're running out of time, so.
I sure am. And so the bottom line is, I hope you can do something to safeguard artifacts in the future. It's real simple. You had your chance before because it was on the agenda. You could have asked John to craft a clause, but not to denigrate the material or say it's of no value. It'd be like looking at the bottom of the Titanic and saying all those chipped plates covered with silt and barnacles when you could find something better over at the factory in Belfast. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no one come forward, I will bring back to council. Now we will have the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion by roll call vote unless any member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. The reading of the full text of all resolutions will be waived unless a council member requests otherwise. Do I hear any requests? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask for a motion.
Public comment.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying, I don't know why I'm trying to get through this agenda so quickly. I guess I'm still back in Virginia. I'm 3 hours. Okay. Okay, at this time I'm going to open it up to the public for any discussion on any of these items. Please come forward.
Good evening, members of City Council. Susan Rodman, mayor, not mayor, definitely not the mayor, member of the Measure H Committee, and I would like to speak on 8.9, and I'd like to say thank you very much to Wayne Benzaguera Construction for the job that they did on the water lines on Main Street, and especially congratulations for having $28,000 left over. And I'd like to request that that $28,000 be returned to the Measure H fund and, or perhaps be used to fix the water lines in Reservoir Street that supply the south side of Main Street, because those buildings and that water line was not done at the same time. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you, Sue.
Kirk Smith, my questions were about 8.3 related to the courthouse committee and 8.9. I assumed if those are pulled, then we'd comment rather than do so now.
I'm sorry, 8.3?
8.3 is the courthourthouse. The Blue Ring
8.3
Committee.
is a
Payroll register.
payroll register. Are you talking about the Blue Ribbon Committee?
Yeah,
That's
8.4.
8.4?
8.4, correct. And 8.9 is the one that Sue just talked about. I think there are questions about that. Thank you.
Kurt, could you come back to the podium, please? On 8.4, did you have a specific question on that?
A specific question would be, you don't have any money. These people, it's taken you a year to come up with the committee to name them, but your item says they have no money. So if a group of people got together and operated faster than you have been in 1 year to come up with a committee, and they said, we want to have it turned into a public service center for civic arts. You don't have any money to bring in consultants to find out how the building's constructed, how you can make modifications, things like that. So there's no money, and so I wonder how much longer it's going to take. Those are the specific questions that I'd have.
Okay, thank you.
And did you want them on
And
8.9?
Right, you said, I thought I understood you to say it's already been discussed, and, okay.
Well, 8.9,
okay.
the specific question would be, I think, when I read the detailed material, it said that the contract is being paid less. I think it's about $30,000. If that's correct, it'd be to ask why, if my memory of what in there is correct. And the second one would be that you, when you're releasing the bond, does that have any impact on the claim made by the Taylors for damage done to the Herrick buildings? Would that affect their ability to recover? Would the bond have any impact? That's the second
Okay.
question.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, I'll bring it back to council. Cleve or John, would you like to address?
I'll give a very quick answer to item 8.4, which was the Blue Ribbon Committee. We actually do have a study that was approved by the state, that's funded by the state, to look at the reuse of the historic courthouse. The cost of that study is about $68,000. The state is funding that, and it will include architects, financial experts, et cetera, that will work with the committee to answer their questions and look at what can be done. So there is actually some actual money being spent to look at those, what could be done in the courthouse. Regarding item 8.9, I believe, and I'm going to ask my finance director, the $28,000, will that go back to Measure H, Dave? Was that Measure H money?
I think he wanted to know why.
Well, I was looking at Sue's question
Oh,
first.
okay.
but-
Yeah, it would basically go back to fund balance.
Okay.
It would, so the actual cost of that phase of the project would be transferred to the Water Enterprise Fund. The rest of it would be, go back into fund balance, and the Measure H committee could make a recommendation to use the funds for
Okay.
Reservoir Street.
Right, so, right.
Yes.
On the reason why, and Rebecca, maybe you can help me with this, but we did actually have a $50,000 amount that was for any extra work that came up during the project. Rather trying to go back through a major process to add the work was approved. The $50,000, only a portion of that was used, so approximately $22,000, which left the $28,000 remaining out of the contract. So
Thank you. Thank you.
There was another.
Do you want me to?
Oh,
Madam
John,
Mayor?
you're going to give additional. Okay, I'm sorry.
With respect to Mr. Smith's second question.
Okay.
Having to do with closing out the contract and releasing the bond, the ct answer is that should have no effect on the claim made by the Taylors. That claim will stand on its own merits. The city is pursuant to the contract with the contractor an additional named insured. So even though the claim was made against us, the city passed that claim on to the insurance company for the contractor. They have an obligation to defend the city. They also have the obligation to deal with that claim. And I'm assuming from what I've heard from our adjuster is that they are in the process of determining what the damages are that they would be willing to pay with respect to that claim. So it won't have an effect on their claim per se.
Thank you. Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll move consent.
Second. With the elimination of 8.6.
Right. Yeah.
And Mayor, I have a comment on an item, if I may, before we...
Okay.
Okay. I have a comment on item 8.4, the Blue Ribbon Committee. I would just like to acknowledge all the members that were selected for that committee. Thank you so much for being willing to serve on this really important task. Really appreciate their creativity and their possibility thinking on this. I'd also like to acknowledge the state funding this study so that our Blue Ribbon Committee has the data and the facts that they will need in order to be successful to repurpose this historic structure so it remains an asset for downtown, that it continues to be an economic engine for our downtown corridor. And that is all because we asked the state at the draft EIR meeting in December of last year. We asked them to help us help ourselves. And I appreciate that our city manager followed up with the AOC, and this study is in the works. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you for thinking of that, Wendy. That is true. Do we want to announce the committee? Would you like to? Okay. I don't have, or we have it on, but go ahead, Wendy, as long as you're.
Oh, absolutely, great.
Okay, Wendy, you mentioned it. So
Adam
go ahead.
Anderson, a business member. Lexi Boger from the county. Cindy Boring from the city. Cindy Boring Savage, I believe, is from the city. Dan Catoni from the county. C. Howell Ellerman, a county representative. Betty January from the county, an alternate. Robert Lanoy, businessman. Kathy Lishman for the city. Heidi Meyerhofer, business, alternate. Bill Robinson, business member. Sherry Tullersrud, business. Paul Tomei from the city. And Connie Zielinski, the city alternate. So congratulations to all of them.
Yes, and I know a lot of those folks, and I think they're well qualified, and I think we're going to have a great decision-making committee. So, okay. Now we will have a roll call, please.
Mayor Borelli,
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patton,
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Aye.
Okay. Items pulled from consent. Ordinances, we have none scheduled. Public hearings. 11.1, direct staff to initiate amendments to Title 10, which is zoning ordinance, and Title 4, construction regulations of the municipal code for, number 1, incorporation of requirements pursuant to the city's stormwater discharge from small municipal separate storm sewer systems general permit, and 2, incorporation of the state's model water efficient landscape ordinance. Mr. Rivas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This item is before you because the city code requires that any proposed change to the zoning ordinance would require a resolution of intention or a minute order per the code. So staff is bringing before you a request that you direct us to amend 2 sections of our code pursuant to first would be the small municipal separate stormwater sewer system known as MS4 permit. That's a general permit that the city is under, and we have until October 15th of this year to enact an ordinance in regards to but not limited to stormwater ordinance for legal authority and enforcement requirements, landscaping code amendments, and low-intensity development standards. And then the other one is the model water efficient landscaping ordinance. That ordinance is required by the state to be adopted by the city no later than December 1st of this year. A little background on that. Governor Brown's drought executive order back on April 1st of 2015 directed the Department of Water Resources to update the state's model water efficient landscape ordinance. The California Water Commission approved the revised model ordinance on July 15th of this year, and local agencies have until December 1st to adopt the model ordinance or adopt their own that would be substantially consistent with the model ordinance. We brought these both together for you at the same time because there is overlap. The MS4 permit would require that we make some amendments to the landscape ordinance, so we want to make sure that they're well coordinated. Again, the reason for this item being on your council's agenda is because it's required and that a public hearing is required for the zoning ordinance section. But we're also looking at making amendments to not only Title 10, which is the zoning code, but also we'll be looking at Title 4, which is the construction regulations of the city code. And also, and I neglected to notice that in the staff report, we would also probably be making amendments to Title 8, which is the public ways and property, Chapter 7, which is the grading, erosion, and sediment control ordinance. So we would also be looking at making some modifications to that. So with that, again, we're just requesting that the council direct staff to initiate amendments to Title 10, which is the zoning ordinance, and Title 4, construction regulations, and also if you would add Title 8, which is public ways and property, Chapter 7 of Title 8, grading, erosion, and sediment control of the city code for 1, incorporation of the requirements pursuant to the city's stormwater discharges from small municipal separate stormwater sewer systems, or a general permit, that's the MS4 permit, and 2, incorporation of the state's model water efficient landscape ordinance. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Okay, any questions from council?
Thanks.
Carol?
I have some, couple of, well, in the mid-'80s, there was kind of a blanket approach to drought landscaping, and the initial reaction was no new landscaping. So I have a lot of concerns about what the state's landscape ordinance is, and if it even relates to us in our community. I mean, the same thing is also true of land. I think we've done a really good job with water efficient standards, so sprinkler standards and those kinds of things. But I just get really concerned when I see things like we're going to implement the state's landscape ordinance. So as long as we are true to holding public hearings on the pros and cons and what we already have versus what the state is requesting, then I won't have too much of an objection to it. But to just blanketly say we're going, and I'm not really sure with the process. The process appears to be that all of this is going to come to the Planning Commission for public hearings. Even though this is a public hearing, I don't have in front of me what, for example, what the state's model water efficiency landscape ordinance is. I don't have the difference between, if you're going to change a development guide, what we have today versus what you're thinking we will have if we do this. So if that's in the Planning Commission's purview, then fine, just as long as that's the process and everyone understands that this is not, if I vote yes on this, I'm not saying that I like the state's model water efficient landscape program. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Why don't I start by just describing a little bit about the process. The reason why this is before you is because there is a section in the government code that requires, and it's also in the city code, that requires that either by resolution of intention or by minute order that the council has to direct staff to initiate any changes to Title 10, which is the zoning code. Mm-hmm. So typically looking at a map amendment, zoning code amendment, or an amendment to the zoning map. And so typically those kinds of amendments are initiated by a property owner, a developer, or staff, but staff then has to ask council to direct staff then to proceed with any kind of code amendment to the zoning code. The other codes, on the other hand, that being Title IV or Title VIII, do not require minute order or resolution intent to amend. We just simply would bring the proposed ordinance changes to you at a public hearing for review, consideration, and adoption. So then going back to your other question about the Planning Commission, yes, any changes proposed to the zoning code would go to the Planning Commission first at a notice public hearing. We would have the draft language, and they would then make a recommendation to you for approval or revision based on whatever the staff's recommendation is. We have some flexibility with respect to the water efficient landscaping ordinance, but it is limited. And I would agree with you. I think the city is doing a very good job in meeting its water reduction requirements. I think the city has a plant palette that basically encourages use of indigenous native plants and also xeriscape or low water usage plants. But for the most part, I think the ordinance is also requiring that landscaping plans and irrigation plans would be submitted to city staff for review to ensure that they're using the best management practices in terms of, the sprinklers, the bubblers, the drip systems, and all of that, in order to reduce then the water delivery system to the landscaping, that it's the best and most water efficient. And so that's what we're doing. I think the threshold is 500 square feet. So any development that's proposing 500 square feet new landscaping would be subject to the code. Anything smaller wouldn't. But of course, it's going to be an extra expense on the applicant or the developer. It's going to be an extra expense on the city, but we foresee that we would pass that along through a fee for the review of that landscaping. The code does allow, and this is state code, does allow us to implement minimum or maximum numbers of, a fee that we would impose to recoup our costs to review both the landscaping and the irrigation plans. So with respect to the small municipal separate stormwater system known as the MS4, the reason why I went ahead and combined these is because one of the requirements under that general permit is what's called LID, or low intensity development. A lot of that has to do with managing stormwater runoff and retention on site, which would be then incorporated in the landscaping plan. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of overlap. So we want to make sure that we're doing a good job of making sure that we're not duplicating efforts, and it's all comprehensive, and it's addressing both concerns, both the use of water supply and then also the retention of stormwater runoff, also which can be used to enhance the landscaping on site.
One other question. If we did not adopt the state's landscape ordinance or their discharge requirements, what would be the ramifications of that?
That's a good question. I'm not sure what the ramifications are. I know we're required to under state law, and I'm just completing another ordinance. It's unrelated, but I'm preparing the staff report, so I included in that staff report, because that's the actual ordinance that'll come before you, what the ramifications are if the council were to opt not to approve it, and that's the solar energy systems ordinance. And what my understanding in that ordinance, and is probably duplicated here, would be something similar, is that the city would then may be ineligible for certain state grants and funding programs. But that's something that I would bring back in a full staff report when we analyze the ordinance. Basically, again, what's before you is it's the council directing staff to pursue this work and go through the process of bringing these ordinances to you for final adoption.
But there was just nothing that, well, what if we don't do it? That wasn't in it. It was just, this is what we have to do. It's like, okay, well.
We'll find out next time.
Well, no, we have to vote on this so
Well, I
that
know,
they can
but
move
this is
forward.
just to make it move forward, yeah.
But it's like, well, what if we don't want to move forward? I mean,
Oh,
because in my opinion, the city has done a great job on, I don't know about the discharge stuff, because obviously I'm not a water engineer, but anyways.
Okay, any more Pierre, are you you're finished with your report? Okay.
Yes,
Any
I'm
more
finished
questions
unless
from
the council has any other questions.
Council
Wendy?
Member Patton asked my question.
Oh,
so
she
She
okay.
did, yeah.
Okay, at this time, I'll ask if anyone from the public would care to come forward and with any questions?
Hi, I'm Cindy Savage, resident of Placerville. I just have a question basically for Pierre, because I went through the process of a project, and Carol brought this up, and there was a runoff. We had in the process of creating the plans for the project, there already was in place engineering for water runoff and for low water emissions. It sounds like it's maybe the same thing or further refined, and there was also a cost in having those plans reviewed by an engineer, city engineer, or an farmed out engineer. Is that not right? This was several years ago, probably 6 years ago, 8 years ago.
Carol,
So I just wanted clarification.
Cindy, you need to address me, and then we'll get,
Okay.
if there's any more.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm just protocol. You know how that.
Okay, I don't think I've had coffee
and if I have
recently.
any more questions, then we'll do them.
Okay, so my question is this, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
In following what Councilwoman Patton was saying, that we already have things in place as far as reviewing our plans, as far as low water emissions, as far as the engineering goes to make sure that no water leaves the property on a new project. If I remember right, when I went through the process, there was already a charge for having an engineer look at the landscape plans to make sure it met all of the qualifications of low water consumption and absolutely no water runoff. And I just wanted clarification as to what this, is it an ordinance, would further mean? Would it tighten it down more? Would it require more cost to the developer? I think maybe it's something you should think about before you vote on it. I don't quite understand, as far as I'm concerned, what the difference is between what we already have in place and what the state is requiring from us. I think maybe as council members, it would be something to look at a little closer, make sure we're not just recreating more paperwork and more cost to developers or confusion to the anyone doing projects in Placerville.
Okay, thank
That
you.
make
I
sense?
just want to make clear, though, that we are not voting on the issue tonight.
Okay.
What we're being asked to do is to have it go further to Planning Commission. So.
Okay, well, that's just more
But-
input, I guess, for that.
Right,
and
okay.
I don't know who looks at it further beyond this,
Okay,
but,
we will certainly,
Okay.
your comments are in the record.
okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Sue Taylor. I gotta say that probably our city and our county conserves water better than anybody in the state, because we always do that. That's just, rural counties seem to conserve more because they understand the resource. So what I read into this is that you either adopt the state model or you adopt your own. And so you are kind of making a decision today of which direction you're gonna go. And I would say that I would look at your own ordinance and see if that is something that would already comply with what they're asking you to do, instead of going on a long journey that may end up there anyway. So I guess you have to have this done by December 2015, and so I would just caution as you move forward tonight that maybe you give them direction to look at what we have and submit that to the state and see if it complies. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'll bring it back to council. Cleve, you looked like you wanted to, you had a comment.
I just want to make sure we're clarifying that we're not voting
Okay,
on
oh,
approving
okay.
any of this tonight.
Okay.
But I agree with the comments that and I think that is the plan, that we would incorporate what the state is requiring into what we currently have, so that it becomes a combination to meet the state requirements. I don't think we'll adopt anything that the state is not requiring us to adopt.
Okay. Anybody else? Comments? Okay, I'll ask for a motion.
I move that we direct staff to initiate amendments to Title 10 and Title 4 and Title 8 as directed in the staff's recommendation.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, 12.2, adopt a resolution approving an additional one full-time equivalent police officer position and approving a $50,000 budget appropriation from the 2014 COPS CHP grant fund for said position. Chief Heller.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The U.S. Department of Justice COPS hiring program provides funding directly to law enforcement agencies to hire career law enforcement officers in an effort to create jobs and to increase their community policing efforts. The CHP grant covers a maximum federal share of $125,000 per officer position during a 3-year period. The grant is competitive and seeks to enhance community policing efforts. We were previously notified of the award from the Department of Justice of the 2014 grant, and the council accepted the grant in December 2014, contingent upon the city funding the required matching share. The department based its application on implementing a restorative policing program, utilizing the additional officer along with collateral matching efforts to enhance our ability to address the challenges being faced in the homeless community. The program is described in detail in your staff report. As I said, the council previously accepted the CHP grant at the December 9th, 2014 City Council meeting. Staff advised it would seek a budget authorization in the 15-16 fiscal year budget. At the time of preparation and adoption of the fiscal year 15-16 budget, the city's match to the grant was not funded. Since then, there's been a significant budget savings realized in part from a recent vacancy in the patrol division, resulting in enough funding to now cover the city's match to the CHP grant. So the options before the council are to revise the fiscal year 15-16 operating budget to fund the city's share of the prior accepted 2014 COPS hiring program grant from the U.S. Department of Justice, or to decline the position and with it the $125,000 grant. The cost estimates are listed in detail for years 1, 2, and 3 during the grant in your staff report. And the budget impact is with a recent vacancy by a classic CalPERS employee in the patrol division, the cost savings in the budget will offset the funding, the city's match of the partially grant-funded position. So staff recommends at this time adopting a resolution approving the additional one full-time equivalent police officer position and approving a $50,000 budget appropriation from the 2014 COPS CHP grant fund for this said position. And with that, I can take any questions you like.
Okay, any questions from council? Wendy?
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Heller, I think that this is, I think we're certainly moving in the right direction to help us address some of the challenges our community is facing, and I applaud you for such a, I think, a creative and coordinated approach. My question is on the forensic multidisciplinary team. Have we started building that team? And my question is, how is this program being received by like the Sheriff's Office and the Public Defender's Office, parole, El Dorado County Mental Health? Are they excited about coordinating with us on this? Or how's that going?
Well, we have existing partnerships that stem back from our 2009 and 2012 CHP grants, which are successful. The forensic multidisciplinary team, there's several examples of that are established through MOUs with our partner agencies. I would describe them as successful. Depending on the issue at hand, will dictate which partners are at the table and what the extent of their involvement is. The forensic multidisciplinary team primary purpose and its greatest asset to this and to the member agencies is it provides an avenue to have discussions of a more confidential nature that can be shared amongst agencies that may not otherwise be able to be shared. So the MOU between mental health, police department, sheriff's department, et cetera, lets these agencies together discuss issues that otherwise they may not be able to under the confidentiality of the forensic multidisciplinary team format. So that's the main advantage to it. So that answer your question?
Absolutely, that's fantastic, because often that confidentiality gets in the way of us being able to effectively, help an individual or serve our community as well. I guess my other question is, under the restorative policing coordinator, which will be a Placerville police officer, you write that the coordinator's purpose is to improve and consolidate the transfer of relevant information to appropriate social service or law enforcement agencies regarding individuals who especially have mental illness. What's an example of that? If we have if we have a member of it's in our community that has mental illness, are you then able to, under this program, to be proactive in helping link them up to social services and help them? You know, they have to want to be linked up to social services. Can you just kind of explain this a little further?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the partnership, the relationship that's established between that program coordinator and the mental health component. So, you know, there's the back and forth, the meetings, the forensic multidisciplinary team aspect of it. But I think in its truest sense, the best way I could describe it, or the best case scenario, is this officer with a mental health clinician or technician in their patrol car on occasion while they're making these contacts. That's the end game to this, and that's where we want to be at. Is and you know, we've had discussions with mental health, and I think that can become a reality here in the near future. Maybe not on a full-time basis, but at least on a temporary and occasional basis. And we did that in the past. I don't know if you recall when we had some operations up along Upper Broadway, and we had the support of mental health technicians with us, along with members of the Community Resource Center, as we went up into the hillside and provided resources on the spot. So that's kind of the spirit of what we're talking about here. Yeah.
Right, and that was a one-time thing, and this is a more of a ongoing program as needed.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, I just applaud your proactive approach to this. Yeah. Thanks, Mayor.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, I'll ask if anyone from the public would care to come forward and with any questions or comments about this issue. Okay, seeing no one, I'll bring it back to council for a vote.
I'll move that we adopt a resolution approving an additional one FTE police officer position and approving a $50,000 budget appropriation from the 2014 COPS CHP grant fund for the position.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patton?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins?
Aye.
Okay. 12.3, adopt a resolution approving a construction contract with George Reed, Inc. for the Central Main Street Overlay Project, Phase 2. CIP 414124 in the amount of $1,001,181.50 and authorizing the city manager to execute the contract, and approving a budget liquidation in the amount of $50,000 from the Chanel School Road resurfacing project, and approving a budget liquidation in the amount of $195,000 from Placerville Station 2 Park and Ride project, and approving a $455,000 budget appropriation of RSTP exchange revenues for the Central Main Street Overlay Project, Phase 2 project, and approving a budget appropriation in the amount of $50,000 from the Water Enterprise Fund for the Central Main Street Phase 2 Water Line Replacement Project, and approving an interfund loan in the amount of $200,000 from the Reserve for Economic Uncertainties to the Transportation Fund for the said project, and authorizing the city manager and city engineer signatory authority up to $50,000 for the supplemental work contract item with George Reed, Inc. for the Central Main Street Overlay Project, Phase 2. Mr. Rivas. Or, how'd I do?
Well done.
Rebecca, are you going to address this? Or?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right.
Good evening, Mayor Borelli and members of the council. Mayor Borelli, excellent job. That was a mouthful.
Thank you.
Just wanted to do a quick little recap on the project. You know, this has been obviously our ongoing baby, our project that we're pushing forward. And on May 12th of 2015 of this year, obviously the City Council approved the preferred selection of aesthetic features for the Phase 2 pavement rehabilitation portion of the project, and granted city staff to release the contract documents for bidding. And diligently so, we did on June 11th, which they were released, and the bids were opened in accordance with the process as described in the notice to bidders. on July 23rd, 2015, and we received 2 bids at that time. One was from George Reed Inc. and one was from Vince Aguirre Construction. Through the bid analysis process, it was determined that George Reed Inc. was not only the apparent low bidder, but also the only responsive bidder, as unfortunately a bid irregularity was discovered in the second bidder's package due to the absence of a required form. In addition, no bid protest was filed, and the time frame to do so per the contract documents has now lapsed. As we approach the fall and holiday season, and in an effort to minimize the impacts to the businesses and residents on Main Street, city staff is recommending that the construction of Phase 2 be pushed to begin in March of 2016. This timeframe corresponds with the stated preferences indicated in survey results received from the Main Street merchants. You may recall we had sent out surveys to everybody, and the sweet spot of time frame to go to construction was between mid-February to mid-April, staying away from mid-May as much as we could. Looking at the schedule, how many working days are in the contract, and how much time they will need to mobilize out and get folks out there to start work. It's getting it way too close to the holiday season, and we do not want to impact our businesses with this huge overlay job. So it's our recommendation that we push it to March start. And as such, staff recommends the following: approving a construction contract with George Reed Inc. for the Central Main Street Overlay Project Phase 2 in the amount of $1,001,181.50, and authorizing the city manager to execute the contract, and approve a budget liquidation in the amount of $50,000 from the Schnell School Road Resurfacing Project, CIP 41210, and approve a budget liquidation in the amount of $195,000 from the Placerville Station Park and Ride Project, CIP 407081, and approve a $455,000 budget appropriation of RSTP exchange revenues for the Central Main Street Project Overlay Project Phase 2, and approve a budget appropriation in the amount of $50,000 from the Water Enterprise Fund for the Central Main Street Phase 2 for the Central Main Street Phase 2 pavement rehabilitation project, and approve an interfund loan in the amount of $200,000 from the Reserve for Economic Uncertainties to the Transportation Fund for the said project, and authorize the city manager and the city engineer signatory authority for up to $50,000 for the supplemental work contract item with George Reed Inc. for the Central Main Street Overlay Project for Phase 2. And with that, that concludes my verbal report. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, any questions from council? Wendy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. All right, Rebecca, I have a couple of questions. First of all, I fully support this project. I am very excited that we're moving forward and getting this done. It's been on our hit list for a long time. With that said, with the suggested budget liquidations of $50,000 from Schnell School Road Resurfacing Project and the amount of $195,000 from the Placerville Station 2 Park and Ride Project, it's just prudent to ask, what are we giving up to agree to those liquidations?
That's an excellent question. On the Schnell School project, it was originally an old CIP that actually we are able to address with our Broadway Crosswalks project.
Okay.
So it's no longer needed.
Great,
So,
good.
great. And that one's actually fully funded through construction. Our city staff turned in the RFA. We got the E76, which is the authorization to spend construction funds, and they gave us a little extra bonus as a result of being good girls and boys and doing our homework and getting it done early. So
Awesome.
we're going to be moving forward with that job, which addresses the Schnell School CIP.
Great.
And then to answer your question regarding the $195,000 liquidation out of the Placerville Station 2 project, that is basically a mere, and Dave, feel free to chime in whenever you're ready, a mere deference for a year. We actually are in the middle of going through a very lengthy Buy America waiver process with FTA and PG&E and AT&T, and we will be coming forward with utility agreements that need to be set up in place for that project, and it does take time. And this project is moving forward now, so we're just merely shifting it to this project.
Okay.
And then when after the calendar year is passed and we're going to be more ready and more poised to move forward with the construction on Placerville Station 2, we'll have another round of RSTP to backfill that amount of money, correct? Thank you.
Great. Sounds prudent. And my last question is, with the recommendation of a $200,000 interfund loan from the Reserve for Economic Uncertainties to the Transportation Fund, what will our balance be in that?
I will defer to Mr. Warren for that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Thomas. The balance, if the loan is approved, it would have a cash balance of $386,000.
$386,000 balance.
With the understanding that the $200,000 would be refunded, paid back when the RSTP funds are received.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, John, you had a question?
I have a question. I should know where every single project in this town is. What is exactly the Station 2 Park and Ride? I think I know what it is, but I just want to see if I'm right.
It is a project located off of Mosquito, the park and ride lot that's up there. There's an old dirt lot that we will be turning into the park and ride. And there is, I'm sure as you've driven over there, there is a giant utility pole in the middle of the drive aisle that is part of the efforts related to the utility agreements and relocation of utilities. It also includes a little bit of water project and a little bit of an overlay. There's a bunch of ancillary improvements that are tied to that. We did receive an FTA grant to assist us with those efforts in construction.
Thank you very much. That is exactly what I thought that was.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll ask if anyone from the public would like to come forward and ask any questions or has a comment on this.
Someone has to go first. I'm Tom Cumpston again. I do have a few questions that I hope the council can ask the staff to answer. First, with the change of construction commencement to March 2016, is the $200,000 interfund loan necessary, or will we accrue RSTP funds between now and March 2016 to make that unnecessary? Secondly, I have some questions about the scope of work. The staff report indicates that the scope of work does include the concrete bulb outs, but it wasn't clear to me whether that includes decorative treatment of the concrete bulb outs or not. And then it does not include, there are a few items listed in the staff report, but one item that is not listed either as included or not included is broadband conduit. That was extensively discussed in the May council meeting, and maybe I missed some subsequent meeting at which that was resolved, but I don't know what the fate of that issue was. The council seemed very interested in May in if that was going to go in Main Street, getting it done before we paved Main Street. My questions about the implications of those budget liquidations was answered, so I think those are the only questions that I have. I do support this project. I'm sorry to hear that it's not going to be done this year. I'm very anxious, as I'm sure everyone is, for that pavement to get fixed up. One thing that may be a little off topic, but in the design picture that's over there and over here, I would recommend, it looks like you're missing one share the lane arrow for bicycles on westbound Main west of Center Street. So I would ask that that be looked at and maybe added if that was an inadvertent oversight. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Anyone else?
So I have a handout for each of you. Do I bring it up or?
Give it to Susan, please.
Hi, Sue Taylor. Basically, I'm going to read this so you'll have a copy of it. Looking through all of the city's documents regarding this project, it's hard to find what it is the city is actually approving, particularly around our building, because there are many renderings of the same project, and it's hard to focus on which one we're actually doing. Remaining concerns that I have for this project that I brought up several times is, number one, I've asked if someone could look into getting a surface that's not so hot. Black asphalt is hot. Are you proceeding with this project or contract even though you know that material will make Main Street more uncomfortable for residents, business owners, events, and tourists during the summer? Two, that the city is not using their discretion to reduce the need for the bulb outs. The bulb out will cause a fire egress hazard due to obstructions being placed in the already too narrow roadway. How will the city mitigate this hazard that is being created? Three, how safe is it for the public to put a bench in a bulb out? If someone gets hit, will the city be liable? Number 4, bollards. Besides creating a hazard on our sidewalks, the bollards that have been selected are not period appropriate as shown in your own streetscape plan. I was actually looking through this trying to find something else, and it's ironic that this picture that you have in streetscape is much what I gave you when I did the research to give you some different ideas, which is completely different than what you've approved, which is much more modern looking. Number 5, where are the possible trees being located, and if a property owner does not want the particular tree chosen by the city, is there any recourse to put in a different tree? 6, the aesthetic color choice for the detectable warning plates was brown or green. The public asked for cast iron, and now we were getting brick red. Looking at other jurisdictions that installed brick red, it fades to a faded rose. How will this be aesthetic, I can't pronounce that, sorry. Conducive to a historic gold town, thanks. 7, I've asked how the encroachment this project will have on our property. Our foundation is under one corner where they want to do a lower ramp, and our water meter sits under the other corner. New issues. Number 1, when I asked at the city council meeting, when this was up last time, how this encroachment would be handled in this contract regarding the Herrick building, I found out for the first time that the plan had been revised to rebuild our entire sidewalk and add a curb against our building. We would like to know how the city structurally plans to do this. You need to know that that side of our building still sits on wood pilings. Also, this sidewalk portion of Center Street is probably in the best condition of the entire street. We would rather you did not touch it. I warned you about the water pressure on Main Street, and now Tim and I have been suffering for 4 long months from damage caused as a consequence of you not listening to my concerns. The public needs to know that the city will not take any responsibility for their contract or the work of their hired contractor. That was shown tonight as the city paid off the contractor that damaged our mural, and we are still left fighting for resolution. Number 2, you should add in the contract that the existing cast iron plates shall remain in place. Your contractor took our cast iron water cover plate and replaced it with concrete. He promised to bring it back when we asked, but we have yet to see it. The concrete replacement is heavy, hard to work with, and cracks easily. Concrete is not aesthetically pleasing as cast iron. 3, the contract lists alternatives for the contractor. The contract states that the city will receive a 3x3 mock-up of the contractor's proposed design. Will the public have any opportunity to comment on those alternatives?
Sue, your 3 minutes are up. So.
You've got number 4. The timer started at 54 seconds.
No.
I was looking at it when I
know, and then we changed it, and actually you got more time.
I just have 2 more short items.
I'm asking is we've got all your comments
2
in
short
front of us,
items
so.
regarding the alternatives. No landscaping. The alternatives are either no landscaping or 5 trees. I'd like to know where the 5 trees are going to be located. The second one is decomposed granite in the bulb outs or stamped and stained concrete. The chosen patterns and colors are not conducive to a historic Main Street. If the city cannot choose the appropriate pattern and color, then possibly it's best not to waste the money and just go with decomposed granite. Are you going to call out a color for that? And the example of thermoplastic sidewalk striping is not good. If you cannot use authentic materials and design relative to the area, I would suggest also saving money and just stripe the street with paint. It is difficult to figure exactly what the city is planning because of all the documents submitted by the project consultants. Thank you for your consideration of the issues that I have raised. I hope that others that follow me will be addressing specific points and elements to this project. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? See no one, I'll bring it back to the council.
Can I comment on
Yes.
one thing? And Rebecca, correct me if I'm wrong, in the staff report, John and I were just discussing that one of the improvements does include the decorative crosswalks as were proposed. I didn't see that specifically spelled out in the staff report. I want to make sure that was understood. So, and the decorative improvements to the bulb outs and to the crosswalks are part of what we are recommending approval tonight.
Okay, we have the comments from Tom Cumston.
Yeah. Dave, why don't you address the issue with the loan?
The loan
Sure.
issue?
Yeah, it was a good question, and we thought of that, and with the project beginning in March, wrapping up shortly thereafter, we anticipate that we'll have a cash flow problem because the $200,000 in RSTP for fiscal year 15-16 will most likely be received in September. So you
Oh, not
have
until September.
that gap of time that we would have to cover, and it could put your transportation fund in a negative cash position. A lot of your transportation projects are on a reimbursement basis, so
Right.
we're carrying the cash flow. And so you have my commitment that we will not exercise the loan until we need it. If it turns out we don't need it, we won't exercise it.
Okay.
If we get our RSTP funding early, that's something that we could forego the loan.
Scope of work.
I think we addressed the decorative treatment already that Mr. Cumston
I think, and then the
requested.
broadband.
The broadband. Rebecca, can you address the broadband and what we've looked into?
Gladly. Actually, coincidentally, we've been in contact with the utility companies, and lo and behold, broadband is already available on Main Street. We are in the process of putting together a very simple set of instructions that we can post on the website that all business owners can review and engage their service. So, yep, it's already there.
And then the bicycle issue, was there one missing?
An additional Sharrow. Yeah, it's basically the striping that, designates the
Okay.
shared lane space between a vehicle and a bicycle. Certainly, I can look into it with the designer, and we can certainly consider adding one.
Okay. And then Sue's comments, did you want, I see that a representative from the companies, do you want to bring forward and talk about it? Is there any-
I think that we would be willing to meet with her and talk about
Some of
the
these-
features that are being improvements proposed next to her building.
Yeah,
and
because
what
some
we've
of this
addressed
addresses
there.
her personal building,
Right.
and so that might be something that,
Sure, so we
Okay.
can take care of that.
okay. All right. Any questions from the council now that you've heard some of these? Okay, let's call for a vote.
I don't have any questions, and I'd like to make a recommendation that we approve construction contract with George Reed as spelled out in item 12.3, items 1 through 7.
A second?
Roll call vote, please.
Mayor, before
Oh.
you do that,
Okay.
Rebecca, did we distribute the new resolution?
I'm going to defer to Ms. Zito.
I'm sorry, I only had it
Oh,
electronically
was
this
on the other
afternoon,
one.
so
I'm
I
sorry.
did not.
I'm mixing up the two items. I apologize. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, that was for item 8.9. Yes, sir.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Borelli.
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Patton.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Aye.
Mayor, if I could, really quickly, I would like to just tip my hat to the staff for putting this project together and finding, and probably a big thank you to Dave Warren for putting this project together in the way that you pieced the funding to make it happen in a timely fashion, because this is no small task, what you've done. And it seems a little bit weird, but transportation projects are so expensive. And I just really appreciate the extra effort that you guys all took to do this.
Ditto. From all of us.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to also add to that I would really like to thank the folks downtown and other folks in this community that participated in this process from the beginning. It shows that when you get folks together and you talk to them, there's a lot of good ideas out there. Some of those ideas don't meet with everyone's approval, and that's fine. That's kind of part of being in a democracy. Sometimes we get what we want, and sometimes we don't. But I think that by and large, the product that we will find on Main Street will be one that everyone will be very proud of. So I kind of thank everyone out there for being part of this. It's a lot of fun. And there's going to be more parts in the future to this project. There are a few odds and ends left that I think will actually be really cool to deal with. So.
Madam Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
The resolution that's in the packet tonight is not the resolution that will be presented to you to sign. The resolution you'll be signing is identical to one in your packet, doing exactly what everything the recommendation asks for. However, there are two things added to it. One has to do with what's referenced in the staff report regarding the bid that was irregular and wasn't responsive. So I added to that resolution this morning a finding that the other bidder was non-responsive and that the bid did not contain the necessary information. That's all the change, but I wanted that reflected in the resolution. So it just refers to that. And as I said, it's in the staff report. It was presented tonight in the report by Rebecca, but it wasn't contained in the resolution in your staff report, but
So
it is in the one.
do we need to change the motion then?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, council reports from other agency meetings. El Dorado County Transit Authority, Councilmember Wilkins.
We had a meeting on Thursday, and we really didn't discuss much that had to do with Placerville, except we were discussing the past fare schedule, and I did bring up the possibility of looking into bringing back, what is it called? A bus stop, a pickup station for the fare shuttle on Main Street, even if it could be only on the weekends, because we're not sure about the funding, because we don't have a centralized parking lot on Main Street. But I would argue that most of the people that would want to catch the bus from Main Street, like myself, would walk to Main Street, and then, because there's a lot of, people can get here without using their car.
Was there a problem, because it was like our streets it didn't work out, wasn't that?
Well, their answer was, we had the shuttle. We had it like 10 years ago. I remember taking it.
Right.
Was the funding, the air quality funding.
Oh, I thought it was
because-
the buses couldn't negotiate or something. Okay.
No,
All
they
right.
do fine during
Oh,
the day.
okay. All right, okay.
So just, I think also you could suggest perhaps the Placerville Station 2 park and ride.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that would be a really great place. There's plenty of parking.
Yeah, there's
and
lots of parking. It makes
Lots of room for
sense.
buses and.
Because last year it was just Walmart and the library, and I
Right.
think bringing it down on this end of the town
Yeah.
would be a big benefit.
Good, Tricia, I'm glad you asked. Okay, El Dorado County Transportation Commission, Councilmember Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There was actually a lot of good stuff at our meeting this last week. Like everyone to know that we just held a public hearing on the draft El Dorado County Regional Transportation Plan for 2015 to 2035. And the comment period ends on that on August 21st. So if any member of the public wishes to comment on our draft Regional Transportation Plan, go to the El Dorado County Transportation Commission website. You can read it there and comment on the plan. The other really important topic at our agenda was the board accepted as final the Sacramento to Placerville transportation corridor analysis. And this is a really hot topic. It's the whole rails to trails that has a lot of passion on both sides. And I really appreciate that the Transportation Commission stepped up and recognized that because this is such a passionate topic that ultimately it'll be the Board of Supervisors that decides what they're going to do with the corridor, but that the board needed the data and the facts in order to make an informed decision. And so it was a study that the Transportation Commission embarked on. And I'd like to briefly talk about their three findings. That if the board decides to keep a Class 1 train going with a separated natural trail, what will that mean? That will cost $13 million. They anticipate the users to be about 100,000 people a year. The net economic benefit per year it'll attract basically $1.35 million. So the payback period on that investment of $13 million is 10 years. So that's for a train with a separated natural trail. The second scenario that they recommended, or that they studied, is a Class 1 rail, so train, excursion train, and a paved path off the rail bed. That cost is $53 million, so it's a lot more. However, it anticipates that will bring in 850,000 new users to El Dorado County. The net economic benefit will be $12.6 million per year. And that's a payback period of 4.2 years. That's interesting. Now, the last scenario they looked at is pulling up the rails, basically, with a paved path on the rail bed plus a natural trail. That cost will be $18.5 million. The users will be 800,000. The net economic benefit per year will be 11.9 million, and the payback is 1.5 years. So that's pulling up the rails and having the two types of trails so that was a very interesting study. So that will, go before the Board of Supervisors to make an informed decision eventually. So I appreciated those statistics. The other thing that's important to our area is that we are embarking on an agritourism mobility study, and they will be meeting this month with the Apple Hill Growers, the Winery Association, and the South County Wineries. And what they're going to be studying is what are the impacts of Apple Hill on the transportation through Placerville. Sometimes we love Apple Hill, and yet we hate weekends in Placerville because we're stuck at the stoplights on Highway 50. So we're going to look at actually, what can be done to help us all get around this area more efficiently while we enjoy the benefits of the Apple Hill season. So I look forward to those findings. And finally, on a state level, the good news on transportation funding is that the governor has called for a special legislative session on transportation and infrastructure funding. He knows we have a problem, and he's calling a special session to address it. The bad news is that the governor's big push is reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and his financial policies are following that line. So that often doesn't work well for us because funding is centered around transit and mass transportation policies. One of the main bills that they are considering does include a bonus, a bump, a 5% basically financial bump to those cities and counties that have self-help measures, basically sales tax measures, to help with their own road funding projects. So if that is something that they finalize, we may want to consider that in the future and take a look at it, because there will be additional monies for those cities and counties that adopt self-help sales tax measures to fund local road projects. So that is my report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. LAFCO. SACOG.
There was a meeting of the Transportation Committee, which I attended on Thursday, and kind of echoing what was just said. Most of it has to do with the funding of transportation improvements, recognizing that there's a lot of deferred maintenance on the infrastructure, and so this is a very big issue. We did talk about the governor's special session. They're futzing around with a bunch of different ways to do that, and most of them is trying to raise revenue without getting anybody too excited about it. So they're looking at use fees, like literally, you drive so many miles a year, you get taxed so much money for the miles you drive. They're looking at fees on diesel. They're looking at a bunch of things. I don't want to get into the weeds on it, but there is some action going forward. There was one interesting thing that I'd like to share with you, though. Here, just recently, probably within the last year, 6 months perhaps, the Board of Equalization lowered the excise tax on gasoline. Given the volatility of a price of a gallon of gas, you probably wouldn't have even noticed it. It went from 18 cents to 12 cents, and that doesn't seem like a lot at 6 cents. The 30% reduction, essentially, or 33%. It cost the state about $50 million, and now that's $50 million that nobody has, and that, surprisingly enough, even $50 million in a state where you spend billions of dollars, it's a lot of money. And one of the interesting things was, in the discussion, they said, well, how are they going to deal with it? And of course, all the sort of novel ways that governments and agencies try to figure out ways to fix things, there was smoothing and taking money from the future and bringing it to the present, and essentially robbing Peter to pay Paul. And after you listen to this for a while, you go, well, why don't we just not do that $50 million worth of work? I mean, now granted, I probably don't have a project that would impact, so I could be very bold with my thinking. But, sometimes it's important to show folks that when you cut off a funding source, something happens, and then you can talk about it more. Basically, what they were talking about was taking a bunch of money from the future. So at some point in the future, you won't have $50 million, essentially, is what it comes to. And what they're all do is they roll the dice and hope that the economy or some other magic will make another $50 million available, or that people will just forget that they don't have something off in the future. So it's kind of an interesting civics lesson. And
But that was something that was required. They had to.
oh no, they had to do it.
to
It wasn't like
that.
they all got together and decided to just
Right.
give everybody back some money.
Right.
There was some thing that went along with it.
That was.
But it was just an interesting sort of point counterpoint that happened there. So we'll be keeping an eye on all of that. They're hoping that the guys in the legislature and the gals in the legislature will figure this thing out and come up with some additional money that will take care of that and other issues on the funding side as well.
Okay, SEDCOR, I was out of town and I did not attend. However, I joined the Chamber of Commerce and I went on their mission fact-finding trip back to Tennessee, and again, experienced a lot of what other cities have done. We visited the little town of Franklin, if any of you have been, we specifically went to Nashville, and then we visited this little town of Franklin, and they have, it's an historic town, and they have repurposed a lot of their buildings. One of the things that really was a shining star and left me wishing that we could do it is their little downtown theater, which I compare our Empire Theater to, and to the tune of $9 million. But they did it, and it's just absolutely fantastic. They do, they're right next door to Nashville, so they do have the opportunity to draw on some pretty good name talent to come. But we could do the same thing. We're Tahoe and 3 stages and Sacramento, and hey. So it was really something to admire and to hear what they went through to do this, but it just shows that it can be done. And a lot of their historic homes, churches, etc., that they are in the process or have done, they're repurposing, and it's wonderful, and it just shows that it can happen, but you have to get a lot of people involved and raise a lot of money, and etc., etc. And then I went on to Virginia to my daughter's home, and while I was there, I called our lobbyists, and I talked to his assistant, Madeline, who's been here, and I gave her our wish list, particularly for Goldbug Park, and she's going to keep her eyes and ears open. She said things are pretty quiet. I did also observe in the Washington Post, a vote came out on the transportation issue, and it's just everybody's talking about transportation, and I have to tell you that our nation's capital, their roads are just about as bad as ours. So they're not getting any more money than we are. And of course their transit system, while I was there, they had 3 major fiascos. So they're everybody's got their problems, and I know we're oranges and apples, but still we all experience kind of the same thing. So one thing, maybe this might be the time, I got an email, and I think maybe some of you might have, from the Sacramento Valley Division, League of California Cities, and they're asking that we do a resolution in support of coalition principles for the transportation infrastructure financing. And so I would like to request that we do that and maybe have it ready for next meeting. And other than that, I just want to thank Tricia and Wendy for taking my place at Transit and Transportation. I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Wendy.
If you indulge me one more time, Madam Mayor, I just want to thank Chief Heller and acknowledge the fantastic National Night Out last weekend. I know we all
I
just
missed that,
yeah,
and
that's
the first one I've missed since my whole 9 years.
Yeah, it was a fantastic evening, and just really appreciate your staff and all your volunteers for putting that together. I had the opportunity to visit a couple of neighborhoods that were brand new this year, and they were all excited, and it was just a fantastic National Night Out once again. So kudos to the entire police department for making that happen again.
Well, along those lines, as I said, I was in Virginia, in Fairfax, and I tried to go to a night out. I thought, okay, I'll just visit one of theirs. And do you know that in the neighborhood,
we found homes. They do it so entirely different than we do, and it's just individual homes in this area where I was. And I have to say, it was raining. It did rain. But this one email came through, or Facebook posting that said, "Is there anybody out there? Nobody's at my house." So I'm not thinking they're getting, and quite frankly, my daughter wasn't at all interested in, and I said, "What's wrong with you guys?" And they said, so I don't think they're as excited about it back there as we are. I don't know.
I have a comment. That's why they're not number one like us.
There you go. Well, I wanted to go and meet, somebody and brag about us, but it just didn't happen. So.
I think we had some raindrops too.
Yeah, we did.
But
That's right,
still
we
had a
did.
pretty
Didn't stop
big
us.
outing.
Okay, all right. Okay, request for future agenda items. Do we have any, except what I just asked for? City manager,
Actually,
staff, Carol?
I did have a comment. I got a request to have us actually look into our city restroom, our public restroom, in light of the gold panning championships for 2016, and it didn't come across in our budget, so I'm just kind of saying maybe we should spruce it up, fix it up, clean it up for the attention we should get next year. And then I would like to also look into the bike racks that Tom Cumpson talked about. They can't be that expensive, anyways, if we could just somehow, I'd like those to come back. Maybe Dave could find an extra, $500 for bike racks or something. But the restroom issue needs to come within the next couple of months, I think, so that we can get it repaired and fixed up.
I've gotten a couple complaints on that restroom too, that it's badly in need of help. So,
I'm surprised it's only a couple, but it is in some need of some help. We do actually have, it brought to my attention, we do actually have a CIP for that. It's not funded. But we can bring that up and bring it back to council to take a look at it and see if we want to find a way to fund it and do some improvements. So
I think it's important.
Yeah.
we'll
Take
take a
care of
look at
that.
it.
Agree with that.
Yeah. Okay, city manager and staff reports. Receive and file quarterly project status report. Mr. Morris?
First of all, I'd like to apologize. This is supposed to be a quarterly report. This is actually semi-annual report. That's in January. So
Well, at least we're.
I've shown on here, the updates should be shown in blue, and the things from the last report are in black. So hopefully it came out that way. Is it all black?
Yeah.
Well, it's
all right.
grayscale, so you should guess.
So you'll have to guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, it gives you, the updates should be at the bottom, or if they're new items
Yeah.
from the last report. And I didn't intend to go through those, but if you have
Yeah.
any questions or anything, it's primarily information on it for you.
Cool.
That's great. Appreciate that.
And Mayor, I have one more
Okay.
item under this copy. I just want to let you know, I received our first report from California. Excuse me, I should have that on. California First for our PACE program. They have received, this was as through June 30th, they had received 11 applications for a total of $270,000. 4 of those have been approved and are under construction so far.
Great.
So
that leads me to a question. Again, I was reading the paper, and are there some problems with some of the tax agencies about, it's the very thing that was questioned when we were doing this, about the accepting like a loan if a home sells, and this is on, I heard they're having some problems. So, I mean, this article indicated there's some problems.
There's
I
none
don't know where I read it.
none that's been brought to my attention.
Okay.
If there is, we tried to do a pretty thorough
I
research
thought we
on
did,
that
and
topic.
it was no product, it was no.
And there's none that have been brought to my attention at
Okay.
this point. So.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Some very, I'll call them nice young men because I don't have any other way, showed up at my house from some solar outfit. It looked fairly legitimate, but there aren't any like grifters floating through town trying to piggyback on this thing, are they? Because, I mean, I don't, they didn't do anything and then they finally left. But, they were pleasant enough. But This is sort of has that.
Didn't
sort
you
of
get their
theme.
card?
I did. They came to my door right
they?
before council, yeah.
Oh, okay. So that,
Well, a lot of like the solar companies will use that as a tool to in their process.
Yeah,
so,
it's a good selling.
yeah.
But we haven't heard any. We haven't heard anything, have we? Yeah. I guess. Well, you know, I mean,
Are you looking at Scott Heller?
Well, yeah. I like to think that she.
We haven't heard of any drifters coming through pushing solar, but, yeah. And we license solicitors and so forth, so, yeah.
You know, that's something we should ask. If the people come to the door, do you have a permit, right?
Ooh, that's a good idea. Yeah, okay.
Police department.
City Hall.
Police department.
Okay.
Is that a permit only if they're selling solar or if they're selling anything?
It's equal opportunity. If there's-
Everybody,
Yeah.
Okay.
everybody's supposed to have one.
Soliciting
even the flower
anything, going around to
vendors.
people's doors, door to door, they need to have a permit, which they can get from the police department, and will, sometimes put hours or whatever the restriction is. So they should have that, and you should ask, yeah, if you're uncomfortable, or call us.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. City council, it's recommended that we take action, receive and file? Or is just your report, we're receiving and filing it? Okay. Okay, upcoming items. There's none
If it's
listed.
all right, we will have a meeting, I guarantee you. If it's all right, I'll read what we have.
Okay.
We felt that there was a little mix-up. We didn't
Okay.
put those in the agenda. But quarterly investment report, financial advisor, professional services agreement, Measure H community survey results, maybe. That one's tentative at this point. Closeout of the El Dorado Trails project, segments 1 and 2. El Dorado County Transit Authority agreement for the Broadway Crosswalks project. Post-construction stormwater management standards and low impact discharge standards to address our MS4 permit. Still some other things we have to do there. Irrevocable offer of dedication for the bus stop on Broadway, to accept that. Permission to bid Broadway crosswalks and El Dorado County Transportation Authority agreement for funding. Part-time pay scale revision, RSTP agreement with EDCTC. We are going to ask for a change to our dental program for city employees. And then item 12.1 that was on your agenda tonight will be
Oh,
back on the
okay.
agenda.
Did you mention the report we had earlier on? Are we going to discuss whether we want to
Greater Sacramento.
participate in the?
That's something for you to determine under future agenda items. If you would like me to reschedule that and bring it back for consideration, we can put it on an agenda.
How do y'all feel?
Well, I think if we're going to do that, I would like to see, because we're already members of
Said court.
other things, and then how the chambers, what they do helps us, because they have some of those statistics, the analytical stuff that he has, rather than just saying, yeah, let's join for $4,500.
Yeah, that's a lot of money to.
I would just like to have a little bit more background, and maybe that comes forward in an agenda item. If we agendize it, rather than have another half of an hour discussion from him, let's talk about, kind of know what he's going to do, but what do we have that's
Already in place.
that's already in place?
And how does that piggyback with our economic development advisory committee?
Right.
And maybe even hearing from them. Did he give a presentation to our economic development? I mean, I'd like
Would
to.
you like that to happen first?
Well, I think it's the kind of their
It is.
their purview.
I thought the
to-
same thing would be good for them to hear that.
to see what they think. I mean, maybe, because they probably already know all what I don't know.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, with that, I'm adjourning the meeting. I'm using. Is that a sound official?
What's that?
Okay.